Hello, welcome back. Please subscribe and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And before we start, I know some of y'all are going to say Diane should have left Marcus way earlier, but honestly, sometimes love makes us stay longer than we should. Let me know if you disagree. Diane Washington woke up to an empty bed once again. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of their modest apartment in Atlanta's old Fourth Ward. She reached across to Marcus's side. Cold sheets told her he'd been gone for hours. Another early meeting he'd claimed the night before, though she was starting to wonder if these meetings were even real. She pulled herself up, her back aching from the double shift she'd worked at Grady Memorial Hospital the day before. Wrapping her worn terry cloth robe tight, she padded to the kitchen. The linoleum was cracked in places, showing the wear of their 5 years in this cramped two-bedroom. Diane made her coffee, the cheap Folgers instant kind, and stared out at the billboard across the street. "Your dreams matter," it proclaimed in bold letters against a backdrop of a successful black businessman in a suit. Once upon a time, Diane had believed that with every fiber of her being. She'd believed that love and hard work could overcome anything. Now, at 32, she wondered if she'd been naive. Her phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor. "Can you pick up an extra shift today?" Sheila called out. Diane sighed. That would be her 4th double this week, but they needed the money. Marcus's business ventures weren't bringing in anything yet, and the rent was due in 3 days. She texted back, "On my way in an hour." By the time she got home that evening, her feet screaming in her worn nursing shoes, Marcus had returned. She found him in their small living room, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. He was still wearing the khakis and polo shirt he'd left in that morning, but somehow they looked wrinkled, like he'd been stressed all day. "How was work?" she asked, setting down her nurse's bag and the leftover sandwich she'd brought home from the hospital cafeteria. "Work?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "What work, Diane? I spent the day filling out applications online, getting rejected by places that won't even give me an interview." Diane moved to the kitchen and began preparing dinner. Chicken thighs she'd bought on sale, rice, and some frozen vegetables. It was the same rotation of cheap meals they'd been eating for months. "Chicken and rice again," Marcus said, not hiding his irritation as he watched her cook. Diane forced a smile, though inside she felt that familiar knot of anxiety. "It's what we can afford right now, baby. But I picked up that extra shift today and I get my paycheck Friday. Maybe we can splurge on some salmon then." "Friday?" Marcus slammed his hand on their small dining table, making the salt and pepper shakers jump. "That's 4 days away. Why do we have to live like this, Diane? I'm tired of counting every damn penny, tired of shopping at the dollar store, tired of driving that beat-up Honda that barely starts." She set the plates down carefully, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're building something, Marcus. Remember, you said your friend Jerome was going to help you with that business loan for your landscaping company. Maybe that'll come through soon." Marcus looked away, staring out their window at the parking lot below. "Jerome's got his own problems. His credit's shot worse than mine. Nobody wants to help people like us, Diane. I'm suffocating in this place." "We have each other," Diane said softly, reaching across the table for his hand. "That's what we always said mattered most. Remember when we first met at Clark Atlanta? We had nothing but hope and each other." Marcus jerked his hand away. "Hope doesn't pay bills, Diane. Hope doesn't get me out of this neighborhood. I want more than this. I want to breathe. I want to stop worrying about every goddamn bill that comes in the mail. You don't understand. You never have." The words stung because they weren't entirely untrue. Diane had grown up poor in rural Georgia, the daughter of a single mother who cleaned houses. Poverty was familiar to her in a way it wasn't to Marcus, who'd grown up middle-class in Decatur before his father lost his job at Delta Airlines. That night, after Marcus fell asleep on the couch again, Diane sat by the window. She watched the city lights, the cars passing by with their headlights cutting through the darkness, the young couples walking hand in hand on the sidewalk below. She wondered when exactly their love had stopped being enough. When had she become the problem instead of the solution? She made a decision sitting there in the dark. Tomorrow she would talk to her supervisor about picking up weekend shifts too. Maybe she could even start doing some private duty nursing on her days off. Anything to make Marcus happy again, to take that look of resentment out of his eyes when he looked at her. The next day, Diane was in the middle of her shift when her favorite patient, Mr. Washington, no relation, despite the shared name, called her over to his bedside. "Diane, honey," the 78-year-old man said. His voice weak but his eyes sharp. "You look troubled today. More than usual." Mr. Washington had been in and out of the hospital for months with heart problems. In that time, he'd become something of a grandfather figure to Diane, always asking about her life, always offering wisdom from his 55 years of marriage. "Just the usual stuff, Mr. Washington. Nothing I can't handle." He patted the chair beside his bed. "Sit with me for a minute. Doctor's orders. I need to tell you something important." Diane glanced around to make sure no supervisors were watching, then sat down. "I've been married 55 years, he began. "Lost my Sarah 2 years ago, God rest her soul. But in all that time, through good times and bad, and we had some real bad times, child, she never once made me feel like I wasn't enough." Diane felt tears prick her eyes. "A man who truly loves you," Mr. Washington continued, "won't make you feel like you're the reason he can't succeed. A man who loves you will see you as his partner, not his burden. You remember that, you hear?" When Diane got home that evening, she found Marcus waiting in the living room. But something was different. He was dressed in clothes she'd never seen before. A sharp navy suit that fit him perfectly, expensive-looking leather shoes, even a watch that caught the light. "Where did you get that outfit?" she asked, genuinely surprised. Marcus stood up, adjusting his tie with a confidence she hadn't seen in months. "Borrowed it from Jerome. I've got an important meeting tonight." "A meeting? With who?" Marcus hesitated, and in that hesitation, Diane felt something shift. This woman named Vanessa Williams and her father. He owns Williams and Associates. You know, that big accounting firm downtown in Buckhead. She thinks she might be able to help me get a position there. Diane's smile was genuine despite the knot forming in her stomach. "Marcus, that sounds incredible. How did you meet her?" "Through Jerome. She was at this networking event last week. We got to talking, and she said her father's always looking for ambitious people." Marcus was already heading for the door. "I don't want to be late." "Wait," Diane called after him. "How long will you be gone?" "However long it takes," Marcus replied, and something in his tone made her stomach drop. The weeks that followed felt like watching their marriage dissolve in slow motion. Marcus spent more and more time away from the apartment. He would leave early in the morning, sometimes before Diane's alarm even went off for her 6 a.m. shift, and wouldn't return until late at night. When he did come home, he was distracted, impatient, like he was physically there but mentally somewhere else entirely. Diane worked harder than ever. She picked up every available extra shift, started doing private duty nursing on weekends, even took on some overnight shifts that left her exhausted but brought in desperately needed money. She sold her grandmother's pearl earrings, the only valuable thing she owned, to make sure they made rent on time. But Marcus didn't seem to notice. If anything, he seemed annoyed by her efforts. "You're always working now," he complained one evening when she came home after a 16-hour day. "I'm trying to help us get ahead," Diane replied, too tired to argue. "Maybe that's the problem," Marcus said. "Maybe you're so focused on working that you can't see the bigger picture." Diane stared at him. What bigger picture? But Marcus just shook his head and went back to scrolling through his phone. One evening in late November, Diane found Marcus sitting in their dark living room, staring at the wall. The only light came from the street lamp outside, casting long shadows across his face. "Marcus, are you okay?" she asked softly. He didn't look at her for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat. "I got the job." Diane felt her heart leap. The position at Williams and Associates. Junior associate. Good salary. Better than good, actually. Room for advancement, benefits, the whole package. Diane's face lit up with genuine joy. Marcus, that's wonderful. That's what we've been working toward all this time. We can finally get ahead, maybe find a better apartment, pay off some of this debt. I'm so proud of you, baby. But Marcus's expression remained unreadable. When he finally looked at her, there was something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Something cold. There's a complication, Diane. The way he said it made her stomach drop. What kind of complication? Marcus stood up and began pacing again. Vanessa. She's interested in me. Romantically. Has been from the beginning, I think. And her father. He likes me because he thinks I'm single, ambitious, unattached. They don't know about you. The words hit Diane like a physical blow. She actually took a step backward. What are you saying? I'm saying, Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength, that maybe it's time we both admitted this isn't working. We want different things. You're content with struggling, with scraping by, with being small. But I need more than this. Content with struggling. Diane's voice cracked. Content. Marcus, I've given everything to support your dreams. I work 16-hour days so you can chase opportunities. I've sold my grandmother's jewelry. I've eaten nothing but peanut butter sandwiches for lunch for 6 months to save money. I've never complained, never asked for anything for myself. How is that being content with struggling? That's exactly my point, Marcus said, and his voice was gaining an edge now. You gave up your own dreams to support mine. You made yourself small to make me feel big. That's not healthy, Diane. We're both stuck in this cycle. Diane felt like the floor was moving beneath her feet. So what are you saying? You're choosing her. You're choosing money over love. Marcus couldn't meet her eyes. I'm choosing a future. I'm choosing possibilities over limitations. I was never a limitation, Marcus. I was your partner. No, Marcus said, and his voice was almost cruel now. You were my anchor. And anchors keep you from moving forward. That night, Diane lay in bed listening to Marcus pack in the next room. Every sound, the zipper of his suitcase, the hangers scraping in the closet, his footsteps on the creaky floorboard, felt like another piece of her heart breaking. By morning he was gone. The only things he left behind were his wedding ring on the kitchen table and a note written on the back of an old electric bill. I need to find myself. Please don't contact me. The following weeks passed in a fog of grief and exhaustion. Diane threw herself into work, caring for her patients with an intensity that worried her supervisor. Diane, honey, said Mrs. Patterson, the charge nurse, you need to take some time off. You've been here every day for 3 weeks. I need the hours, Diane replied, checking Mr. Washington's 4. What you need is rest. And maybe someone to talk to. Her friend and co-worker LaShonda finally cornered her in the break room during what should have been her lunch break, but which Diane was spending doing paperwork. Girl, you're scaring me, LaShonda said, sitting down across from her. When's the last time you ate a real meal? When's the last time you went home before midnight? Diane looked up from her charts. I'm fine, LaShonda. No, you're not. And that's okay. But you can't work yourself to death over that sorry excuse for a man. He wasn't sorry, Diane said quietly. He was just ambitious. LaShonda made a sound of disgust. Ambitious. Baby, there's a difference between being ambitious and being selfish. Marcus was selfish. He used you up and threw you away the minute something better came along. Maybe I wasn't enough, Diane whispered, the words she'd been thinking for weeks finally escaping. Don't you dare, LaShonda said, her voice fierce. Don't you dare blame yourself for his choices. You were more than enough. You were everything. He just couldn't handle having a woman who was stronger than him. 3 weeks after Marcus left, on a cold December morning, Diane found a thick envelope in her mailbox. Her hands shook as she recognized Marcus's handwriting on the return address. Inside was an elegant wedding invitation with gold-embossed lettering. Marcus Johnson and Vanessa Williams request your presence at their wedding celebration. Diane stared at the date. 6 weeks. He was getting married 6 weeks after walking out on their 5-year marriage. At the bottom of the invitation, someone had handwritten a note. "We hope you can join us for this joyful occasion and celebrate new beginnings." LaShonda found Diane crying in the supply closet an hour later. The invitation crumpled in her fist. "He actually invited you to his wedding." LaShonda's voice rose with disbelief and anger. "That man has completely lost his damn mind. Maybe he wants me to see how much better off he is," Diane said through her tears. "Maybe he wants to prove he made the right choice. Or maybe," LaShonda said, "he wants to see if he broke you completely. But baby, look at me." She grabbed Diane's shoulders. "You're not broken. You're bent, but you're not broken." Diane smoothed out the invitation, reading it again. "I think I need to go, LaShonda. I need to see this for myself. I need to understand why our love meant so little to him." "If you're going to that circus," LaShonda said firmly, "you're not going alone. I'll be right there with you." The day of the wedding arrived gray and cold, typical Atlanta winter weather. What Diane hadn't told LaShonda, what she hadn't told anyone, was what had happened 3 days ago. She'd been leaving the hospital after her shift when a black Mercedes pulled up beside her. The window rolled down to reveal Dr. Michael Thompson, one of Atlanta's most prominent cardiologists and, as it happened, the son of Georgia's former governor. "Diane Washington," he'd called out. She'd recognized him immediately. His face was regularly in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution Society pages, and he'd been featured on the cover of Atlanta magazine as one of the city's most eligible bachelors. "Yes. I'm Michael Thompson. I've been hoping to meet you. I heard about your situation from a mutual friend at Grady Memorial, and I wanted to offer my support." What followed was the most surreal conversation of Diane's life. Dr. Thompson explained that he'd heard about Marcus's abandonment through the medical community gossip network, and he was appalled by the story. More than that, he was impressed by her strength and dignity throughout the ordeal. "I have a proposition," he'd said. "I'm sure you've heard about the Marcus Johnson situation. It's become quite the scandal in our circles. I think it's time someone showed that young man what real class looks like." And that's how Diane found herself 3 days later, getting ready not with LaShonda's borrowed dress, but with a stunning designer gown that Dr. Thompson had personally selected and purchased. LaShonda stared in amazement as Diane emerged from her bedroom in the floor-length emerald silk dress that probably cost more than their rent. "Girl, what is happening right now? Where did this dress come from?" "I'll explain later," Diane said, checking her reflection one more time. The professional stylist Dr. Thompson had sent over had transformed her. Elegant updo, flawless makeup, diamond earrings that caught the light like stars. "Later. Diane, you look like you're going to the Met Gala, not your ex-husband's wedding." The doorbell rang. Through the window, they could see a white Rolls-Royce Phantom waiting at the curb. "That's my ride," Diane said simply. LaShonda's jaw dropped. "Your ride? In a Rolls-Royce? Diane Washington, what have you done?" Dr. Thompson stepped out of the car as Diane approached, looking distinguished in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. At 6'2" with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confident bearing that came from a lifetime of privilege, he was exactly the kind of man who commanded attention wherever he went. "You look absolutely stunning," he said, offering his arm. "Dr. Thompson, I still can't believe you're doing this. Please call me Michael. And believe it, sometimes good people deserve to have someone in their corner." LaShonda rushed out behind them. "I'm coming too." "Of course," Michael smiled. "There's plenty of room." The wedding venue was the Grand Ballroom at the St. Regis Atlanta. As their Rolls-Royce pulled up to the valet stand, a crowd of wedding guests were still arriving. Heads turned as the distinctive car came to a stop. Michael stepped out first, then came around to help Diane from the car. The moment she emerged, conversations stopped. She looked like royalty. The emerald dress hugged her figure perfectly, the silk catching the light as she moved. The diamonds at her ears sparkled like fire. But more than the clothes or jewelry, it was her bearing, confident, serene, unbroken, that made people stop and stare. Is that Diane? Someone whispered. Who's that man with her? That's Dr. Michael Thompson, the governor's son. What is she doing with Michael Thompson? As they walked toward the entrance, more whispers followed in their wake. She looks incredible. How does Marcus's ex-wife know Michael Thompson? They look like they belong together. Inside the ballroom, their entrance caused an even bigger sensation. The usher who approached them had a completely different attitude than he would have shown the struggling nursing aide they'd been expecting. Dr. Thompson, he said with obvious recognition and respect. What an honor to have you here. Right this way, please. Instead of being seated in the back, they were escorted to seats near the front. Not quite family seating, but close enough that everyone could see them clearly. Marcus, who had been greeting guests near the altar, froze when he saw them. His face went completely white. Oh my God, he whispered to his best man. That's Diane, the ex-wife. She looks like everything I threw away, Marcus finished quietly. Vanessa, resplendent in her wedding gown, noticed the commotion and followed everyone's gaze. When she saw Diane, elegant, confident, and accompanied by one of Atlanta's most eligible bachelors, her smile faltered slightly. Who is that woman? She asked her maid of honor. I think that's his ex-wife. That's his ex-wife. The one who supposedly held him back. The whispers throughout the ballroom were becoming impossible to ignore. She's gorgeous. How did she land Michael Thompson? Marcus must be kicking himself. She looks like she belongs in that world more than he does. The ceremony began precisely at 3 o'clock, but the buzz in the room was no longer about the bride and groom. All anyone could talk about was Diane's dramatic entrance. Marcus could barely concentrate as the wedding party processed down the aisle. His eyes kept drifting to where Diane sat, looking like she belonged in this world of wealth and privilege more than he ever had. The orchestra, an actual orchestra, not just a pianist, began playing Pachelbel's canon. The wedding party processed down the aisle. Bridesmaids in flowing champagne-colored gowns, groomsmen in perfectly tailored tuxedos. And then Vanessa appeared. She was beautiful in the way that money could make someone beautiful. Flawless makeup, professionally styled hair, a wedding dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her father, distinguished and proud in his custom tuxedo, escorted her down the rose-petal-strewn aisle. But even as Vanessa made her grand entrance, people were still stealing glances at Diane. The woman Marcus had described as holding him back was sitting with the son of a former governor, looking more elegant and sophisticated than half the people in the room. Marcus fumbled his vows twice. His concentration completely shattered. Diane watched it all with serene composure, Michael's hand gently resting over hers in a gesture of support. She felt no pain, no jealousy, just a quiet amazement at how different her life had become. You're handling this beautifully, Michael whispered. I'm not the same woman he left, she whispered back. The ceremony itself was brief but elaborate. The officiant, some prominent pastor whose name Diane recognized from billboards around the city, spoke about love and commitment and building a future together. Marcus's responses were confident, Vanessa's voice clear and strong. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in applause. Rice and rose petals flew through the air. The orchestra struck up a triumphant recessional. Diane sat perfectly still through it all. The reception that followed was even more dramatic than the ceremony. Word of Diane's transformation had spread through the wedding party, and everyone wanted to get a closer look. Michael proved to be the perfect escort, charming, attentive, and completely at ease in this world of Atlanta high society. He introduced Diane to various guests as, "My dear friend Diane Washington, one of the most remarkable women I've ever met." Each introduction sent ripples through the crowd. These were people who moved in Marcus and Vanessa's circles, people who had heard the story of Marcus's struggling ex-wife who held him back. Seeing Diane like this, elegant, confident, accompanied by royalty, shattered their preconceptions completely. "Diane Washington," mused Judge Patricia Williams, a family friend of Vanessa's. The name sounds familiar. She's Marcus's first wife, Michael explained smoothly. A brilliant woman who's been far too modest about her accomplishments. The judge's eyebrows rose. First wife. But I thought. Marcus said she was. Apparently Marcus said a lot of things that weren't true, Michael replied diplomatically. As they moved through the reception, more and more people began putting the pieces together. The whispers followed them everywhere. That's his ex-wife. She looks incredible. How does she know Michael Thompson? Marcus said she was some struggling nobody. Clearly Marcus was lying. Marcus couldn't take his eyes off them. Every time he tried to focus on his new bride or their wedding guests, his attention was drawn back to Diane. She looked like she belonged in this world. More than he did, more than he ever would. Vanessa noticed her new husband's distraction. Marcus, you've been staring across the room all evening. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, he lied. I can't believe she came. Your ex-wife. The one you said was holding you back. Marcus looked at his bride, then back at Diane, who was laughing at something Michael had said. I think I may have been wrong about a few things. But the real shock came during the father of the bride's speech. Mr. Williams stood at the microphone, but instead of giving the traditional toast, his expression was serious. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, before we celebrate, I need to address something that has come to my attention this evening. The room fell silent. When my daughter told me she wanted to marry Marcus Johnson, I did what any father would do. I investigated his background. What I found was disturbing. Marcus went pale. Vanessa looked confused. I discovered that Marcus was married before, to a woman he described to my daughter as someone who held him back and never supported his dreams. Based on his descriptions, I expected to meet someone bitter, small-minded, perhaps vindictive. Mr. Williams gestured toward Diane's table. Instead, I see a woman of such grace and dignity that she has clearly thrived despite the obstacles placed in her path. A woman accomplished enough to attract the attention and respect of some of our city's finest citizens. All eyes turned to Diane and Michael. The room was electric with tension. Marcus, Mr. Williams continued, you lied to my daughter about your past. You painted your ex-wife as the villain in your story when clearly, she was the victim. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. The silence was deafening. Vanessa stood up slowly, looking between her father, Marcus, and Diane. Is this true? Marcus, did you lie about her? Marcus tried to find his voice. Mr. Williams, I can explain. No explanations necessary, the older man said firmly. The evidence is sitting right there. Mrs. Washington has clearly done quite well for herself since you abandoned her. One has to wonder what she might have accomplished if she'd had a supportive partner instead of one who blamed her for his own shortcomings. Michael stood gracefully and helped Diane to her feet. Every eye in the room was on them. Mrs. Washington, Michael said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. Would you like to say anything? Diane looked around the room, at Marcus, pale and trembling, at Vanessa, tears streaming down her face, at the hundreds of guests watching this drama unfold. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. I have nothing to say about the past, she said simply. But I will say this. The best thing Marcus ever did for me was leave. It forced me to discover who I really was without him. She looked directly at Marcus for the first time all evening. I'm not the same woman you left, Marcus. Better. And I'm grateful that I got the chance to find that out. The room erupted. Some guests applauded. Others whispered furiously among themselves. Vanessa collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Michael offered Diane his arm. Shall we go? I think we've made our point. As they walked out of the ballroom together, the whispers followed them. She's incredible. Marcus is an idiot. She's way too good for him. Did you see how she handled that? Pure class. Outside, as Michael helped her into the Rolls-Royce, Diane finally allowed herself to smile. How do you feel? He asked. Free, she said. Completely, utterly free. Good. Because tomorrow I'd like to take you to dinner and discuss something. What? Michael smiled. I meant what I said in there. You are one of the most remarkable women I've ever met. I'd like to get to know you better. Not as Marcus's ex-wife, not as someone who needs rescuing, but as the extraordinary woman you clearly are. Diane looked at this kind, successful, handsome man who had appeared in her life like something from a fairy tale. I'd like that very much. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away from the hotel, leaving behind the chaos of the ruined wedding, Diane realized something profound. She hadn't just survived Marcus's betrayal. She had transcended it. 6 months later, the society pages of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution featured a photo of Dr. Michael Thompson and Diane Washington at a charity gala, looking radiant together. The caption read, "Power couple. Dr. Thompson and Ms. Washington announce their engagement." Marcus saw the announcement while sitting in his small apartment. He'd had to move back in with his mother after losing his job and his reputation. Vanessa had annulled their marriage within a week of the wedding disaster. He stared at the photo for a long time. Diane looked happy in a way she had never looked with him. Confident, radiant, loved. He realized then what he had really lost. Not just a wife, but a woman who could have made him a better man if he'd been smart enough to let her. Sometimes the people who claim you're holding them back are really just afraid you'll discover how much better you can do without them. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. And when they leave, thank them. They just freed you to become who you were always meant to be. Now here's what I want to know, and I'm probably going to get roasted for this, but I'm right. Do you think Diane showing up with Michael was petty revenge, or was it just her living her best life? Because some of y'all are going to say it was calculated, but honestly, sometimes the best revenge is just being happy. Let me know in the comments if you think she went too far. Also, was Marcus redeemable? Or was he too far gone from the start? Drop a comment and tell me. Could he have changed, or was Diane better off without him from day one? If you haven't subscribed yet, please join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we share hope and inspiration for anyone who's ever felt like they weren't enough. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and how this story resonated with you. Because in all my years in business, I've learned that character is rare. You showed more grace and dignity in one evening than most people show in a lifetime. That's exactly the kind of person I want representing my company. Diane was speechless for a moment. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Here's my card. The position starts at $75,000 a year, with performance bonuses. It's not charity, Mrs. Washington. It's recognizing talent when I see it. That evening, Diane sat in her apartment, the same apartment she'd shared with Marcus, but somehow it felt different now. Lighter. She looked at Mr. Williams's business card, then at the hospital scrubs hanging in her closet. For the first time in months, the future looked like something she could shape rather than something that was happening to her. She called LaShonda. Girl, you're not going to believe what just happened to me. 2 months later, Diane's new office had windows that looked out over downtown Atlanta. Not huge windows, not a corner office, but windows nonetheless. She was designing wellness programs for Williams & Associates' 500-plus employees, focusing on work-life balance, stress management, and support for working families. It was meaningful work, and she was good at it. Vanessa had become an unexpected friend. The younger woman stopped by Diane's office regularly, sometimes for advice about the employee wellness programs, sometimes just to talk. I keep thinking about what you said that night, Vanessa mentioned during one of their coffee breaks. About remembering who you were before you met him. What about it? I realized I never really knew who I was without my father's approval, without someone else defining my worth. Marcus wasn't the only one who needed to figure out who he really was. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Have you heard anything about Marcus lately? Vanessa asked carefully. Diane shook her head. No, and I don't want to. That chapter of my life is closed. But that wasn't entirely true. Marcus had tried to contact her several times. Texts, calls, even showing up at her old apartment building. Finally, she'd agreed to meet him one last time, at the park where they used to go when they were young and broke and in love. He looked different when she saw him. Thinner, older somehow. The confidence that had carried him through their marriage and into his new relationship was gone. "Diane," he said as she approached the bench where he was waiting. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. What do you want, Marcus?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I want to apologize. Really apologize, not just say sorry because I got caught." Diane sat down on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining distance between them. "I've had a lot of time to think," Marcus continued, "about what I did, why I did it. And I realize I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me." "Marcus." "No, let me finish. Please." His voice cracked slightly. "You loved me when I had nothing. You worked yourself to exhaustion to support my dreams. You never complained, never asked for more than I could give. And I repaid you by blaming you for everything that was wrong in my life." Diane looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the successful man in the expensive suit, but someone who was lost and broken. "I don't know how to fix what I've done," he said. "I've lost everything. My job, Vanessa, her family's support. My own mother won't speak to me. I have nothing left." "I'm sorry you're hurting," Diane said gently. "I really am. But Marcus, I can't fix this for you." "Can't fix you? That's something you have to do yourself. Is there any way?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Is there any way you could forgive me? Maybe we could try again." Diane was quiet for a long time, watching a young couple push their toddler on the swings nearby. The child's laughter carried across the park, pure and joyful. "I do forgive you, Marcus," she said finally. "I have to for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Doesn't mean going back. It means I'm not going to let your choices continue to hurt me." Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. I hope you learn from this," Diane continued. "I hope you figure out how to be honest with yourself and with the people who care about you. But I can't be part of that journey. I have my own life to live now." As she stood to leave, Marcus called after her. "Diane, for what it's worth, you were always enough. More than enough. The problem was never you." She turned back one last time. "I know that now, Marcus. I wish you'd figured it out when it mattered." Walking away from that park, Diane felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete freedom. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't hurt. She was just done. 6 months later, the employee wellness program at Williams & Associates had become a model that other companies were asking to replicate. Diane had been featured in Atlanta Business Chronicle as one of the city's rising stars in corporate wellness. She'd moved into a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in Virginia Highland, with hardwood floors and a kitchen that got morning sunlight. She'd bought herself a new car, nothing fancy, but reliable and hers. More importantly, she'd started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but she'd met a kind orthopedic surgeon named James at a medical conference who made her laugh and who'd never once made her feel like she wasn't enough. LaShonda teased her mercilessly about it. "Look at you, all glowing and happy. I told you that sorry man was just holding you back." "You were right about a lot of things," Diane admitted. "I usually am. It's a gift." One afternoon, while reviewing applications for their new mental health support program, Diane's assistant buzzed her. "Mrs. Washington, there's someone here to see you who doesn't have an appointment. Says it's personal." Diane looked up to see Marcus standing in her doorway. He looked better than he had at the park, healthier, less desperate, but there was still something broken about him. "I'm sorry to bother you at work," he said. I wanted you to know that I'm getting help. Therapy. I'm trying to figure out how I became someone I don't recognize." Diane gestured for him to sit down, though she remained behind her desk, maintaining professional distance. "That's good, Marcus. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. I also wanted you to know that I never thanked you. For all those years, for everything you sacrificed. I took it for granted, and that was wrong." "Okay. And I wanted to say. He struggled with the words. I wanted to say I'm proud of you. I heard about your success here, the recognition you've gotten. You deserved all of this long before now. Diane studied his face. What do you want from me, Marcus? Nothing, he said, and for the first time since she'd known him, she believed he was being completely honest. I don't want anything from you. I just wanted to acknowledge what I did, and to tell you that I'm trying to become someone better. I hope you succeed. So do I. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Diane. That night at the wedding, when Mr. Williams exposed everything, I was humiliated and angry. But later I realized something. You could have destroyed me completely if you'd wanted to. You could have told everyone exactly how badly I treated you. But you didn't. Even after everything I did, you took the high road. That says more about who I am than who you are. Marcus smiled sadly. Yes, it does. And that's why you'll be fine, and why I almost wasn't. After he left, Diane sat in her office for a long time, thinking about the woman she'd been when she first met Marcus. Young, hopeful, willing to sacrifice everything for love. Then she thought about the woman she was now. Successful, independent, confident in her own worth. She preferred this version of herself. That evening, she called her mother in rural Georgia, something she'd been doing more often lately. Mama, I need to tell you something. What's wrong, baby? Nothing's wrong. That's what I need to tell you. For the first time in years, nothing's wrong. Her mother was quiet for a moment. You talking about that husband of yours? Ex-husband. And yes, partly. But mostly I'm talking about me. I'm okay, Mama. Better than okay. I'm proud of you, Diane. I always knew you were stronger than you thought. I'm starting to believe that myself. The moral of the story. True worth isn't measured by someone else's ability to see it. It's not determined by how much money you make, what neighborhood you live in, or who chooses to stay in your life. Worth is inherent. It's built from character, kindness, integrity, and resilience. Some people will try to make you smaller to make themselves feel bigger. They'll blame you for their failures, make you responsible for their happiness, and convince you that you're not enough. But you are enough. You always were. And sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is leaving, because it forces you to discover just how strong you really are. Now here's what I want to know. And I'm probably going to get roasted for this, but I'm right. Do you think Diane should have taken Marcus back at the end? Because I know some of y'all are thinking, forgiveness means giving second chances. But honestly, some bridges should stay burned. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, because I have a feeling this is going to be controversial. Also, drop a comment if you think Mr. Williams was wrong for exposing Marcus at the wedding. Was that too harsh, or exactly what Marcus deserved? If you haven't subscribed yet, please join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we share hope and inspiration for anyone who's ever felt like they weren't enough. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and how this story resonated with you.